Great, I think we're ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nutrition with Elena. And I will turn it over to her.
Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Thanks for joining. So, we are going to do two recipes today that are both going to make my kitchen very hot because they are going to be more like a fall recipe. So, you guys can enjoy them, when the time feels maybe better than today for them. But I thought it would be good to start like introducing some things that we can do with some of our fall veggies and just different ideas to incorporate in, fun, easy to prepare dishes. So I am going to start with just getting this tofu sheet pan dish in the oven. So I'm going to get everything prepped right now for it. Now you'll notice that I'm using carrots because I went to Aldi and they were out of sweet potatoes. So I was like, we'll just talk about, we're going to talk about adapting in recipes today. So I was like, this is actually fine. And actually, I almost think that carrots might work a little bit better for the recipe. So sweet potatoes were delicious, but I think carrots will be equally as good. So this is a maple sheet pan, maple Dijon mustard sheet pan dish. So we're just going to cut our carrots into like little chunks, about that big. And then we're going to get the rest of the stuff together. I do have the oven preheating to 400. So we'll get this cut. I'm going to get a bowl so we can just add the dressing right to it and mix it up. Great. In the next couple sessions, we're going to be talking about kind of like some meal prep types of ideas, how to kind of utilize what we have, how to save money, all things that are helpful right now with, food prices a little higher than normal. So this is a super good, quick recipe. If you are going to use a sweet potato, I use just kind of like a medium to large one and just kind of peeled it and chopped it into cubes. Now for that, if you're going to use sweet potato, we're going to start it a little bit earlier before you put the rest in, just because it kind of cooks at different speeds. But carrots and broccoli kind of go at a similar pace. Broccoli a little bit quicker, but we're just going to put it all together today. If the broccoli ends up a little softer, that's fine. If the carrots are a little crisper, that's also fine. Okay, so we have our carrots. I actually also have just like the extra firm tofu again, because that's what they had there. So I'm just going to drain this out real quick. And, we've done this before where we can press this out too, just to get a little bit more of the liquid out. If you want to wrap it and put something heavy on top of it. I'm gonna leave this to the side and we'll mix this last with the dressing so that it doesn't crumble up in with the veggies. And then for my broccoli, I'm going to do about 2 cups of florets. So probably one of these right now. So if you're, sheet pan meals can be great for maybe like a food prep, especially if you're by yourself, this will feed you for a couple days. This one probably doesn't freeze as well because like the cooked tofu doesn't necessarily freeze that well, but it still will freeze. So you could potentially freeze this. Great. we're just going to kind of get all the we'll get all the recipes started today before we get into the education piece, just because everything kind of needs a little time to cook. All right. So we have our broccoli. And I'm going to cut our tofu into cubes. We just have that ready. So we could use, I know the recipe called for the super firm, which is obviously that thicker, more dense texture, has a little bit more protein in it. But then this is the extra firm. So one step down, but still tends to hold its texture, when you're cooking with it. Just a little bit less dense, more moist. But it does tend to kind of cling on to the marinade a little bit better too. So, if you prefer that, you can certainly make that swap when you're cooking with it. Sometimes, when I made it, like the other veggies tend to have a little bit more flavor than the actual tofu does. So what I'll do a little bit today too is reserve a little bit of this marinade to then we'll brush it on the top when we're done. Great. So we're going to start with a tablespoon of maple syrup. You can use a little less if you want, but that's gives it a good little sweet flavor. Half a tablespoon if you don't want as much added sugar. It ends up being about 2 grams of added sugar per serving, so not too crazy with the added sugar. We're going to do 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard. And we'll do a tablespoon and a half of apple cider vinegar. Great, and then we're going to do a tablespoon and a half of olive oil. And having a little fat in this marinade will help with those fat soluble vitamins that are in our veggies, help us absorb them. We're going to do a tablespoon of soy sauce. And then a tablespoon of water. And I'll just spin it out a tiny bit. Great. And now we'll add our spice. We're just going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of paprika. So just a little bit of paprika in here. And this mix was very tasty. The Dijon mustard really makes it nice. Just whisk it with a fork. All right, so I'm going to do about half in with the veggies. just take up this whole tray. So I might put the tofu in a separate container. Great. Okay. So I'm going to get this started in there, and then we'll get the tofu in a separate tray. All right, so let's put our tofu in here, and we'll add a little bit more dressing in with that. Get it stirred around a little bit. Save a little bit to brush on when we're done. And if you like, if you have time, you can always let this sit in the fridge for a little while, like as an actual marinade. Okay. Now I'm going to get out another tray, and then we are going to put a little parchment paper down, because these are not as good as my stone ones. Definitely stick. My pot is blocking you. Great, so I have our tofu and our parchment paper, and we'll probably midway through maybe flip this. Great. I'm gonna set a timer for 15, so then we can go in and stir it and flip it and everything. Great. All right. There's one recipe in. Now with that, you can serve it if you wanted to serve it with a little bit of like a starch, maybe some brown rice or barley or quinoa or something like that. Great. All right, so now we can start on our chicken tortilla soup. So I'm gonna grab out my chicken from the fridge real quick. So we'll talk about this a little bit in our presentation. So basically, what we're doing is kind of like taking a recipe and like using it in different recipes. So this one is salsa chicken. So this was just a jar of salsa and chicken in the crock pot, and it just cooks up nicely. The salsa really flavors it, and then you can use this salsa chicken in different recipes. So for this one, so I mean, you can make like a bowl with it. You can do enchiladas, tacos, you know, I'll eat this with like rice and beans, or this tortilla soup that we're going to make today. So just like a nice way to utilize this. So we're going to start with just onions and green pepper. We're going to get that sauteed. Let's pull up my recipe. So we'll get that going real quick. I'm gonna start heating up my pan just so it can get itself going over here. So I'm going to do about half of this pepper because it is a pretty large pepper. Do a little tiny bit more than half. Great time of year for peppers, right? Farm fresh peppers. If you have gardens, they're like definitely coming in pretty good. And then when I did my trial of the soup, I did use fresh tomatoes, and that actually is really tasty. So you could either use the canned, diced, whatever, or fresh. So it is kind of a nice recipe to utilize some of that, summer harvest. Okay. You can also put a little jalapeno in here if you like a little bit of a spice. That would work really well. I'm going to add some olive oil. We can do some sauteing. So I'm going to put the pepper in first just because that tends to take a little longer than the onion. This is not heating up super quickly. All right, so now we'll do our onion. We'll chop that up. I'm going to do half of the onion again because it's a pretty big onion. All right. So while that's getting sauteed, I think we're just going to pop into the slides because this, from past classes, this thing moves pretty slowly. So let that saute while we're talking to start with. Great. So today we are going to talk about how to use AI as our kitchen assistant. So I know we've done a little bit with this before, but I just want to kind of expand it a little bit. Not to say that we always need to use AI as our kitchen assistant, but it can be something fun to play around with sometimes. So we'll kind of just talk about some things to look up, some prompts that we can use, how we might just utilize it to help us in our endeavors. So some benefits to using technology in our kitchens. We have easy access to recipes, making grocery lists to avoid forgetting items, finding ways to substitute ingredients and save money, and then meal ideas based on what we have in the fridge. So this is my messy fridge. So I put a picture of my fridge onto Google Gemini, and came up with a couple ideas of recipes that I can make. So gave me a creamy peanut yogurt cabbage slaw recipe, roasted eggplant and pepper veggie bowl, and then berry and peanut butter Greek yogurt bowl. So I thought that was kind of fun. We don't need to add pictures. We can just kind of like type what we have in there and it can give us some different ideas. So some prompts that we can give it. So my prompts are going to be at the top. So I'm saying there, give me a recipe with 30 grams of protein, 8 grams of fiber, less than 600 milligrams of sodium that is high in vitamin C. So you can be really specific. So this gave me a roasted red pepper and black bean chicken salad. So you see the ingredients, you see the breakdown, the directions, how to assemble it. So it's a really kind of in-depth little snapshot of just a recipe that kind of hits all of those points that we're looking to hit. And then I see that recipe and I decide I don't want to use spinach. So it gives some other options. So it gives me the shredded red cabbage and like what that would be good for. It gives me kale, and then it gives me like the chopped romaine and using extra bell pepper. So a good little summary of some other options of things I can use to kind of give me a similar taste and mouthfeel, but without using that spinach. And then I have my salsa chicken that I made, right? So I said, give me 3 recipe titles of meals to make with my salsa chicken recipe. So it gave me fiesta stuffed sweet potatoes, smoky salsa chicken enchilada bake, and zesty shredded chicken and black bean power bowls. So it gives kind of 3 pretty distinct ideas of other recipes I can make with this leftover chicken that I'm going to have. And then I wanted to kind of see if I can set up a grocery budget to $100 a week, and what like a menu outline would look like for that. What would recipes look like? So I broke it down into the breakfast options to rotate, the lunch options to rotate through with the recipes. And then it gives the 7 days of dinners. So a lot of different options there. Even the fridge clean out fried rice. I like the idea of that. I feel like I definitely need to try that. And I thought this one was fun. Help me plan a menu for a fall bonfire party for 8, keeping the food costs to under $75. So it gave a nice little breakdown of options for that. So it gave me the mulled apple cider and cocoa. It gave me the potato salad, the autumn slaw, and then desserts. So I gave it a prompt that said, let's do that, but with less added sugar and no processed meats. So then it swapped things out and changed the recipes a little bit to kind of cut down on that added sugar and give us some, recipes without the processed meats for the sides. And then it also gave the drink options, which would just be a different combination of options without the added sugar. So some really fun things to kind of play around with there. And then some easy recipe swaps. So some things that we might do just to kind of save us from going to the store. So like using the aquafaba or chickpea liquid instead of egg whites, broccoli stems instead of water chestnuts, or even making a hummus out of broccoli stems, which I thought was interesting. I've never done that before. using pickle juice as like a vinegar or similar acid substitution. Obviously, like the sour cream, plain Greek yogurt, cottage cheese mix, we can, swap those out for each other. Turning stale bread into croutons or thickener. And then other things we can do with, technology. We can scale recipes. So if we're serving at a large party, we have that, at our fingerprints to utilize. Just gonna put a little broth in here real quick. I'm getting a little burning. You might ask, look into like some freezer preparation instructions so we can just make sure we're not wasting food because we don't know how to properly store it. Fixing flavor issues. So if something's not quite right, we can get some ideas there. Seasonal and local eating guidance, flavor pairing, seasonal ideas, party planning, food gift ideas, medically tailored meal plans and ideas. I think that this is particularly helpful because it can kind of take the different like parameters that people might have, be it reduced sodium or maybe higher fiber, lower fiber, and give some ideas based on that. And then if we have questions on best by, sell by dates, how long things are good for in the fridge, can be a resource for that as well. Great. So we get back into our recipes. There we are. All right. So we have our one small green onion. I'm sorry, it's not a green onion. It's just a regular yellow onion. I wrote that wrong in the recipe. I apologize. So now we're going to add our diced tomatoes, our corn, and our black beans. Sorry, let me just get my... So we're doing 1 can of the fire roasted tomatoes. Okay. And my tofu and veggies just beat. So I'm going to go in and give a little stir. We can flip the tofu just to make sure everything's cooking uniformly, not burning. Let me get my right back. Okay, so we can flip our tofu. The veggies look like they're cooking nicely. Probably need about 15 more minutes. Same with this. Does anybody have any questions while I'm flipping my tofu? Okay.
So I do have a question slash comment. So you said you use Gemini as your AI. So using ChatGPT or something else would be essentially the same
Yeah.
thing. Give it the
So I
same.
think last time we did this, I used ChatGPT, and since then I've kind of just been using Gemini more because it doesn't seem to have the same limits that ChatGPT does for the free version. So I just have been leaning towards that. And it seems to give a similar thing. I don't see much difference between the two. But there's others that people use, Claude and Grok, and there's a lot of different ones. I just seem to gravitate towards Gemini.
Great, thank you. I guess my point was it doesn't matter, just whatever is convenient to
Yeah,
you.
and honestly,
Get the
now when you
same
go
thing.
into Google, like it's popping up there, like, as much as like, maybe some of the stuff isn't great with AI, like everywhere you look online, it's utilizing it. So I'm like, we might as well use it to our benefit if we can. All right. Great. All right, so let me get back to this recipe. So we're gonna do our corn. We're just using canned corn. You could certainly like cut some fresh corn and that would be so yummy and tasty, or you could use even frozen corn. Um, Sometimes I just like the taste of canned corn, so I was like, I'm gonna try canned corn in this recipe, and it worked for me. And I think it is nice sometimes to have those recipes where like almost everything you can pull out of the pantry for, right? So a lot of this stuff is like from the pantry. And you could even use, if you want this to be plant-based, you could use like a super firm tofu to kind of get a similar vibe in the soup as the chicken. You know, that's always an option too. All right, and then we have so we're gonna do a half teaspoon of paprika. Actually, let me do my black beans too before I forget. So we're gonna just do half a can of black beans. You can certainly do more if you want. All right, so we've got that going. We're gonna use the rest of our, I'm using chicken broth, but again, if you wanted to make it plant-based, you could certainly use, you know, the vegetable broth. So we're gonna do 4 cups of the chicken broth. I already put a little bit in, but we'll put the rest in. And then we're also going to use a cup of water just to have a little bit more liquid in it. And you can play around with that if you want it more like a chili consistency. You can obviously use less fluid. If you want it a little bit even more loose and soupy, you could use, you know, more water. Great, so we're gonna do a half teaspoon of paprika. And a half teaspoon of garlic powder. And then we're just going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin and salt. I'll get my salt real quick. Okay. Great. So we have that. Now I'm just going to shred up some of my chicken and we can add that to it.
And could you just repeat, the chicken came from, you cooked it in the crock pot with a jar of salsa, was that correct?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I should have that at the top of the recipe. But yeah, it's super easy. I just I do it like typically on high for like 3 to 4 hours. So you made like probably about a pound, a little more than a pound, and probably just gonna use about a pound for this recipe. Great. Okay.
Okay, kind of a silly question, but if
Well,
you made a lot of chicken and you wanted to, in the crock pot, wanted to freeze some to do this again, like later, at a later date, do you
yeah,
recommend shredding it before freezing or leaving
yeah,
it for,
probably before. Yeah, that would make sense. I think. I think that would work well. Yeah, because you can make like a lot of chicken in this rest. With the salsa, you might just want to do a little bit more salsa. Um, but yeah, that would freeze well. And you can, like we said, use it for other things too. Great. So I have enough in there now. So I'm just going to bring this to a boil, and then we'll just let it simmer. Let me just show you. I did find. Just want to show you the topper I put in the pictures that I took. Well, of course, it just ended up buried somewhere in my pantry, but I found like those little tortilla strips that were fun, just like as a little crunchy thing to put on top of that. Um, so that works well in that soup. And then so we're gonna everything else is just kind of cooking. When this is ready, it's gonna look really yummy and tasty like the picture. But yeah, so those are our two more fall-ish recipes, but fun to kind of get started thinking about fall because it's not too far away. Great. Does anybody have any other questions? Is there something in the chat?
I love the idea of the chicken in the salsa. I do
Oh,
chicken in the crock pot fairly often because I primarily eat plant-based, but I do eat chicken. And
mhm.
I've never done it with salsa, and I can't wait to try it. That sounds great.
Yes, it's so easy.
yes, it's a regular for me too, although I've only ever made tacos with it, but I love the
Mhm.
idea of, saving some extra for soup or something else.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, great. I'm glad. Definitely. Is there a question in the chat? Can you see, Erica?
Nope, nothing in the chat
Oh, okay.
today.
Just something was looking on my end. Let's see if I can see what. Oh, okay. It's just you. Okay,
That was
perfect.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So next class, we're going to talk about like budgeting and just kind of working on that, which I felt like this is a good segue into
Yeah,
that, right? It's definitely like working on that meal prep can be really important. I just started listening to I don't know, this guy has been showing up on my Facebook feed who he like helps people with their budgets and like they come to him like a mess. And his whole thing is like, are you meal prepping? Like meal prepping is going to save you so much money. Stop going out to eat, start meal prepping. And it's so
yeah.
true.
Great.
And
Thank
I
you.
I do want to say I don't think your fridge was messy, but I do think it was pretty full.
It's
Yeah,
very cool.
I don't want to show you my fridge.
I also then typed in, can you help me with how to organize this fridge? And it suggested I maybe get rid of some things that were in it. Yes,
Perfect.
that is my
Yeah.
husband's forever complaint is how much stuff is always that he's having to juggle around to find things. But my dog appreciates it because something
I'm
always
sure.
falls
I'm
out
sure.
and then
Yep. Yep.
he gets it.
Great.
They like to do the cleanup.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. Yeah, so
Well,
this
thank
will
you
be,
very much.
Yes,
yeah,
thank you so
definitely.
much.
Thank you
I'm
all.
sorry
And
you have to have a hot kitchen on this warm day, but
it's all good. At least I have good food
But
to
we
eat.
appreciate it.
Thank you. It's at least I get
all
to eat
right.
it, so that's what matters.
There you go. There you go.
Great.
Yeah.
See you next month.
Well, great.
Thank
Well,
you. And yeah, see you next time.
thank you. See you
Okay.
next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.